Hi friends, welcome to TechHarvesting. In today's video, we'll have a look at how we can go ahead and do basic arithmetic operations with variables in Rust. That's the first thing we'll have a look at. So basically it's just addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and so on. Then let's have a look at how we can do it with different data types. So for example, if you want to multiply or add an integer 32-bit with an integer 64-bit, it's different in Rust, and let's have a look at how we can convert them so that they'll be we can add them. So that's basically called typecasting, converting types. And then at the end we'll also have a look at how we can convert strings to numbers so that we can just input a string and we can get back it with an addition or subtraction with an operation done. So that's basically converting a string to an integer. Also, before we start, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you get more useful content like this, and let's get started. So to get started, I've got this basic setup here. So in our main.rs file, I have a variable called num1, which is an i32 and its value is 60, and I have a num2, which is an i32 also, and its value is 30. So first we're gonna have a variable called operation results, and then I'm just basically adding both of them, and then we're printing out the result. So here let me give sum, and then we'll open the terminal and do cargo run. Now that should give us the sum 60 plus 30, which is 90, because as you can see we are adding it. Just like that we can do the basic operations. So for example, if you do subtraction, so you can just run the file again, we get the difference, then we can multiply, and then we can divide. Then we can also find the remainder of the division by using the mod operator, which is basically a percentage sign. So if you do this, you can find the remainder. Right now, as you know, 60 and 30 are perfectly divisible, so if you run this, we should be getting 0. But then if you change the value to, for example, 31, then you'll find a different answer. As you can see, the remainder is 29. Now in this case, as we know, both of them are of the type i32. So for example, if I make this i32 and if I make this i64, this won't work perfectly. So I'm just gonna go ahead and change this to addition, and then if I were to run this, you can see we are not able to add both of the numbers, and that's because this is of i64 type and this is of the i32 type. So in Rust, if you want to add two values, it doesn't matter if they're both integers, both unsigned integers, they should be both having the same bit size. So this is a 64-bit integer and this is a 32-bit integer, so you cannot basically add both of them. You'll need to cast them into the same type and then add them. So this works the same for float also, floats. So if I make this 60.5 or 60.6 and I make this 30.7, make this f64 and f32, then you'll find the same error as you can see, and that's how this thing is. So they should be of the same bit size if you want to be able to add them. Now before we have a look at how we can go ahead and convert the types of these variables, I want to show you one more thing. So for example, this is an i8 and this is also an i8. Let's make this of a value 120 and this 60, for example. Now this is 120, this is 60, but then the maximum value of an i8 will be 128 or 127. So if you add these two, it'll go more than the maximum value of an i8. So if you run this, you get an overflow error because the operation with overflow. That's because i8's maximum value is 127, and when you add 120 and 60, the value will be more than 127. So if I make this i16 and i16, and if I run it now, it should work perfect. So that's one important thing. The value of the operation should not overflow the bit size of the variable. Next, let's have a look at typecasting, which is basically converting one type to another. So in here, as you can see, this is an i16 and we can make this an i8 by just giving i8 here. So now this will create an error because we have given it as i16 here. So if you make this i8, then basically this 60 is converted to an i8. So you don't even have to specify the type here, it's automatically inferred as an i8. Similarly, you can do the same thing here also. For example, you make this i32 and then remove this, so it will directly be converted to an i32. You can also add an underscore here to make it easier to read. Now obviously that's complaining because we cannot add both these different types, so let's just remove that. And the other way to cast variables is using the as keyword, which is mostly what we're going to be using. So we go here and we give as i64, and then this one's type will be i64, and here for example you can give as i8 and it will go as an i8. Now as you can see, again it's throwing an error, but then what we want to do is we want to add this i64 with an let's make this one as i8, or we don't need to do this, actually we just specify it here as an i8. So now what we need to do is we need to convert the smaller number, which is smaller type, which is an i8, into an i64. So we basically go here and give as i64, and then if we run the program again, we should get no errors and we should be able to add them. As you can see, we're able to add them, and that's because we're converting this to an i64. Similarly, for floats also you can do the same thing. So basically you make this 60.5 for example, you make this an f64, and then 120.5 and make this an f32. So then you go here, this is the smaller one, so you just make this an f64, and if you run this now you get 181, which is the correct operation. Next, let's have a look at how we can convert a string to an integer. So in our last video we had a look at how we can go ahead and import a string, so we're just gonna basically go ahead and do the same thing here. So this is basically a string, we're taking the input, and then here we're gonna just go ahead and print the input. Let's also use our standard library, so use std::io. Now let's run it. We have our cursor waiting, and we type something, it brings us back the same thing. So now what we want to do is to convert a number into a string into an integer. So what we type here will be a number. So for example, if you run and if we type 8, then we want to, for example, do an operation and return the same value back. So for that we'll need to parse the string and get the value from it. So for that, what you're gonna do is create a new variable. So let integer input equals input dot, and then what you're going to do is first we'll trim it. So this is basically removing a character at the end of the string, which is called an escape character. So every time we run this and we hit enter, like just after this, an invisible character is created. So when we do the dot trim, it automatically removes the escape character. Next, you're going to use the dot parse function. So you do dot parse. So this is going to help us parse the string, and then you do dot unwrap. Now this will give us an integer, so you can give that as a type, for example i32, and then you can go ahead and directly print the integer input. So now if you run this, you'll basically get the same answer. So if you give 5 for example, you get 5 back, but then you want to check if it's working, if it's converted to an integer. So that you can just, for example, add 2. Now if you run it again, you give 5, you get 7, which is 5 plus 2. Thanks for watching. That was it for this video. We had a look at how we can typecast and also convert strings to integers. Also we had a look at basic arithmetic operations at the beginning of the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.